Chef Johnson will be demonstrating the recipe for country biscuits, which yield 36 2¼ ounce biscuits. Ingredients include 2 pounds 8 ounces all-purpose flour, 3/4 ounces salt, 2 ounces granulated sugar, 2 ounces baking powder, and 14 ounces unsalted butter, cold.
Today we're going to be using one of the basic quick bread methods, that's country biscuits. And in this particular recipe, we have a variety of ingredients. One of them being all-purpose flour. The second one being baking powder, sugar, salt, unsalted butter, and whole milk. Why we're going to do this particular method is so that we make a flaky, light biscuit, and that's by using solid butter. So the first thing that we want to do is sift all the ingredients, all the dry ingredients together. That's all-purpose flour, and the reason that we use all-purpose flour for this particular recipe is we don't want to use any high bread flour or high gluten flour due to the simple fact we don't want a tight, heavy crust or any tight breads. We want something light and flaky. And when we incorporate the butter into this, we're going to have layers, nice layers in between all of the biscuits. The next thing we're going to do is we'll add all the baking powder into this. And the baking powder itself, as you notice, is kind of a large amount. This helps in incorporating into the flour along with the butter to making it nice and light and airy. And the butter helps because that's with the layering, and I'll show you that as we go along. The sugar, which is just regular granulated sugar that we use every day, is just to give it a little bit of a nicer, a sweeter, a little bit more sweeter flavor. And obviously the salt is for color and for taste as well. So now I use just a regular sifter. One of the reasons that I sift like this is because what I am doing, I'm incorporating air by tapping the side of the sifter. I'm incorporating air into the dry ingredients as well. It's all about air, lightness, and flakiness in these biscuits. It's not about anything heavy. It's about layering. So what I will do next is I will incorporate the unsalted butter. And the reason that we use unsalted butter is because we've already salted our dry ingredients, and we don't want to incorporate more salt into the biscuit itself. So I will take it. You want to make sure that your butter's cold, obviously, because you want a flaky pastry. You don't want anything soft. If it's soft and liquid, it'll give you like more of a liquidy, a soft biscuit. You want something that's nice and light and airy. You can use forks for this method, or you can use a pastry cutter to do what I'm about to do, but using your hands seems a lot more consistent. You get more. You have more of a feel with the dough itself. It's going to end up being sort of like a cornmeal mixture, small pieces, and it takes a little bit of time, but it's well worth it in the end. I don't want to put this in a mixer and blend it together because I want layering in my biscuits. This is the final product. This is what we're looking for. You can even feel the texture in the flour and the butter. It almost has a shortness to it, but this is what's going to give you a light biscuit. So at this point, what I do is I take the whole milk, and by using whole milk, rather than using non-fat or low-fat milk, it helps with the butter fat. You have to work rather quickly, and move your bowl around in a circle. It helps you to gather your dough up faster than just stirring. And you don't want to over stir this or over mix this because you're making layers. Okay, and here's the consistency that we're looking for. The next thing that we'll do is put some flour on the table, a nice amount, and this is because we don't want the dough to stick. We're going to knead the dough just a couple times. And the reason behind this, we do not want to over-knead this dough because we want to get a nice rise on it. And that's about it.
What makes it rise?
The butter and the baking powder and the slight kneading. And what we don't want to do is we don't want to over-knead this, because if you over-knead the dough, then you're going to end up with a flat biscuit. So I've kneaded this a couple of times, just a few times, about 8, and lightly knead it. And we'll roll it out to about 1/2 of an inch. Sometimes if you want a thicker biscuit, you can roll it out to about 3/4 of an inch. But most biscuits look nice at about 1/2 of an inch thickness, because you have a lot of baking powder in there. So, like I said before, don't over-roll it, don't over-knead it. This looks good. Now, when you cut these biscuits out, drive straight into the dough. Don't twist your biscuit cutter, because by twisting your biscuit cutter, then you're going to prevent the layers from giving it any flakiness. So you go straight down rather than twisting. And a lot of people have a tendency to want to twist their biscuits, but what you're doing is you're sealing the sides so that the biscuit itself cannot rise. When you put the biscuits on your half sheet or your sheet pan, make sure that you have a piece of parchment paper down, and it does not have to be greased. Put your biscuits close together, because putting them close together, when they bake uniformly across. You don't get one biscuit higher, one biscuit lower. When you cut your biscuits, also make sure that you cut them as close together as possible. Once you get all your biscuits cut out, you can move your scraps together. and re-roll it one time. If you re-roll your scraps more than once, you'll end up with a very flat biscuit. The air is pretty much gone at that point. Even now, if you try to roll it now, they're not going to be as poofy and nice as your first batch, but you really don't want to waste dough either. So you end up with like lines in your dough, seams. Okay, so here is the finished product before we bake. Make sure that your ovens are at 425 degrees, no more, no less. If it's less than that, if your oven only comes up, if you've only got it up to about 350 degrees, everything is going to spread. Too hot, it's going to bake too quickly on the outside. You're going to end up with really dark on the outside and kind of pasty on the inside. So 425 is the degrees that you should use for this particular country biscuit. Just make sure that your oven is preheated at that point. There are two different things that you can do to these lovely little biscuits. It's probably bad. One of the things is to take a little bit of egg wash, which is just a beaten egg with a little bit of salt in it. Run it across just a couple of times. And then add some, and what I did was I marinated some sage leaves in some olive oil. Just take some nice sage leaves, put them in some olive oil, leave it for about an hour, and you press them right into the top of the biscuit itself. This gives the biscuit a nice flavor. What happens at this point also is when you put the biscuits in the oven with the sage leaves on the top, the sage leaves fry up so that they're crunchy, and it's really nice actually. Just a different take on country biscuits. What the egg wash does is it gives some color to the biscuits. We're going to continue putting the sage on the biscuits, on half of the biscuits, actually, and we'll put them in the oven, and we'll see how they turn out in about 15 minutes. So it's been about 12 minutes since we put the biscuits in the oven, so let's see if they're ready to come out of the oven. So what we will do to this half, notice how the egg wash has darkened this particular half down, made them nice and brown. And this half, what we're going to do is add a little bit of melted butter to the top. And this softens them up a little bit. And if you'll notice, on some of these, on all of them actually, and I'm going to pick one up. If you notice the sides, if you have a biscuit that you get a nice side like this too, that means you've done something right. You have a nice light flaky biscuit ready to be eaten, and this is country biscuits.